So today's daf is daf Tesvav. And just to summarize, Rebbe's Shita is that if a Jewish Eved was sold to an Akum, then his Yarshim, his Krovim, can be Goel him. But on the other hand, the din of Yitzia B'Sheish, that an Eved goes free after 6 years, does not apply in the case of Nimkar Liakum. In the case of Nimkar Liyisrael, Rebbe holds just the opposite, that he's Yotze L'Sheish, but he's Eino Nigal Yidei Krovim. He can only be Goel himself, but his Krovim cannot be Goel him. So that's the Shita of Rebbe. And we're going to now study the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer on the top here of Tesvav and Aleph. Ve'idach, and the other Tana, that's Rabbi Lazar, who holds that even in the case of Mocheres Atzmo, which means that he could be what's called an Eved Nirtza, and he's not excluded from Ozno, is Hahil Gzeres Shava Hu Diyasa. And that extra word Ozno, according to Rabbi Lazar, is going to be used for Gzeres Shava to teach me that Ritzia is on the right ear. The Asa, and that's the Sanya we learned in the Brayso. So Rabbi Lazar Omer, Minay l'Ritzia shehi bi ozen yimonis. Nemar kan, as far as Ritzia, it says ozen, v'ratza as adono es azno, v'never l'halon. With regard to a mitzora oni, it says in Vayikra Yudalid ozen, and we learn Gzeres Shava ozen. Ozen ala halon, in the case of mitzora, we know it's the right ozen because the pasuk says v'lakacha kohen midama Hashem v'nasan al tunuch ozen hamitayra yamanis. Afkan, here too, in Ritzia, it's going to be Ozen Yamin, Dafka on the right side. And the implication is that if the Ritzia was on the left side, they would have to do another Ritzia, and that's what Rabbi Lazar derives from the Gzeres Shava Ozno Ozno. Be'idach, but what about the Tanakama, who holds that you could darshan Ozno for Gzeres Shava, but also use the word Ozno to derive a mute to exclude Mocher Atzmo from Ritzia. And therefore Ritzia is only applicable to a Nimkar Liyisrael al Yidei Bezdin. And now Rabbi Danakam is going to try to show you how from one pasuk you to derive multiple conclusions. Im Kain, if we need Ozen only for the Gzeres Shava, to teach me the right ear for Ritzia, Lemakra, the pasuk could have said Ozen. Why does it say Ozno? And that word Ozno is coming as a diuk to teach me Dafka Ozno shel Eved Animkar Lidei Bezdin Nirtza v'lo shel Mocher Atzmo. So if an Eved is sold by himself, he sells himself into Avdus, then there's no din of Nirtza. Ve'idach, and what about Rabbi Lazar? He doesn't exclude Mocher Atzmo from Ozno. Hahu, that word Ozno, Biboile Ozno, Velo Ozno. That there's a difference here between an Eved Ivri, who could be a Nirtza if he refuses to go free, and an Am Ivriya. In an Am Ivriya, there's no din of Ritzia at all. And when it's time for her to go free, she cannot choose to remain an Am. Ve'idach, and what about the Tanakam who uses Ozno to exclude Mocher Atzmo from Ritzia? Nafkalei, this din that an Om Ivriya is excluded from Ritzia, he derives from the Ve'im Yomar Ha'eved, with the Heya Yediyah, V'lo Oma Ivriya. So there's no Ritzia for an Om Ivriya. Ve'idach, and going back to the courtyard of Rabbi Elazar, who he excludes an Amma from Ritzia from Ozno, is Miboile, he needs the word Ha'eved to teach me that an Eved is not Nirtza Ad Sheyomar Ahavti Es Adoni Lo Eitzei Chavshi Kishahu Eved. When he's still an Eved and he's within his 6 years of Avdus, then he can declare whatever he declares he wants to remain and therefore become an Eved Nirtza. But if he doesn't say so until after the 6 years are up, he's already a ben chorin, and he cannot be an eved nirtz v'idach. And what about the Tanakama who holds that the din of Amma, that she doesn't get ritzia me eved ha eved nafka, as we saw before, the ha eved excludes the Amma from ritzia, and eved he uses to darshan that he's not a nirtza until he says lo eitzei chavshi when he's still an eved. And the extra hey teaches us to exclude an amma from being nirtza. V'idach, what about Rabbi Lazar? And the answer is eved ha'eved lo darish. He never had a drush of eved ha'eved. That's called part of the lishna, the rehita of the pasuk. Now, Rev Tim Yomi is a continuation of an analysis of machlok shin Tanakam Rabbi Lazar on that third din in the brisa with regard to Hanukkah. Hanukkah, of course, are the gifts that an Adon is chayav, he has to give to the Eved from his nechasim when he frees him. In Parshas Re'eh in Dvarim Tesvav, my taima, the Tanakam Domer Mocher Atzmo Manikin Lo. The Tanakama holds that when is there a din of Hanukkah? That's only if he sold himself. And the Adon is not chayav to give Hanukkah of matanos from the chasim if he's mishtachrer until schar sachir can teach us that we equate nimkal yidei bezdin. So we need a special limud to expand the din of Hanukkah and apply it to nimkal yidei bezdin. Mi'et rachmana kami machru bezdin. But even though we have schar sachir to teach us that we should equate nimkar al yidei bezdin with the nimkar al yidei atzmo, but nevertheless we have a separate miut kami machru bezdin. It says hanek tanik lo, and the extra word lo is used to darshan a miut lo v'lo lemochers atzmo. So again, let's just summarize. The Tanakama's opinion is that mocher atzmo does not get Hanukkah, and he derives it from the word lo, and that lo is a miut v'lo lemochers atzmo. V'idach. And what about Rabbi Lazar, who holds that manikim, even in the case of mochers atzmo, and he doesn't have the miut of lo? What does he do with lo? Hahumi baile v'lo liyasham. That means that it's true that you have a chiyuv Hanukkah, even in the case of mocheres atzmo, according to Rabbi Lazar against the Tanakama. But nevertheless, even though you're chayiv in Hanukkah, but only if the Eved is alive. If the Eved dies, where normally a malva would have to pay up a chov to the Yarshim, but here there's no din of Yarshim, and the halacha is that the Hanukkah does not go to his Yarshim. And that's derived from lo. So the Gemara asks the following question: Yarshim amai lo? I don't understand how you can exclude the Yarshim from the chiyuv Hanukkah that the Adon is obligated to the Eved. Sachir kari rachmana. The Torah classifies an Eved as a sachir. If he's a Jewish Eved, he's a sachir. He's just working for wages. And in the parsha of Sachir, we have the parsha of Hanukkah in Dvarim Tesvav. Ki shnosach sachir avadecha sheishanim. And we have Hashva, an equation between the din of Nesinas Hanukkah to an Eved Ivri, to the din of Tashlumei Schiris, to a Poel. Mas Sachir Pulasol Yarshav. If the Baal Bais didn't pay up his Sachir and the Sachir is dead, and you pay now to his Yarshim, is high Pulasol Yarshav. So to an Eved, his wages will be paid up to his Yarshim in the event that he dies, and the Hanukkah is included in that category called Ulasa. Ella, so the Gemara says lo. According to our laws of the drush of lo, is v'lo lebal chovo. In other words, you give hanaka to the Eved himself, but not to someone that the Eved owes money to. And here we get into the sugi of shibuda de Rav Nasan. Midesfirlad bi'alma kirebi Nasan, the sanya, etc., etc. And here the Torah is saying we do not apply the principle of Rabbi Shibuda Rav Nasan to the case of hanaka. The Sanya, we went to the Brisa. So let's say Ruvain borrowed money from Shimon. Shimon gave money to Levi. So let me go over it one more time. Ruvain lent money to Shimon. So Shimon borrowed money from Ruvain, not like I said before. And Levi borrowed money from Shimon. So in effect, Ruvain owes money not only to Shimon, but also to Levi. No, I got it wrong. I'm sorry. Again, there's Ruvain lends money to Shimon. Shimon lends money to Levi. Correct? So Levi owes Ruvain. I'm sorry, not Shimon. Through Shibuda Rav Nasan. Are you following the names here? It's a little bit confusing. So Levi, who borrowed money from Shimon, who Shimon borrowed money from Ruvain, we're going to take money out of Levi's pocket, and also then we'll give it to Ruvain. Talmud Lomer, we derive from the pasuk v'nasan lasher oshem lo. Osham lo. Pasuk about Midbar Perkei. Now, the context of this pasuk is a Gazlan who took a shvu al sheker. When they accused him of gzela, he took the oath. And now he's willing to confess that he took a false oath. The Torah says he has to pay keren plus chomesh, and he's got to bring a korban osher. Now, the simple pshat in this pasuk is that the Gazan has to pay the nigzal. But it says, Lasher Hashem lo, and Rabbi Nasan darshins, Hashem is the lashon of Keren, because Hashem very often replaces Keren. And therefore, Lasher Hashem lo means to Misha, Lemisha Keren Shalom. So the pasuk is coming to teach me that if the nigzal is chayav to the malveh, then the Gazlan has to pay that malveh. So again, in a general case, Levi is going to pay directly to Reuben through Shibud Rav Nasan. Also, lo la fuke. And the word lo is coming to exclude it with regard to Hanaka. That this din of Shibud Rav Nasan is suspended with regard to Hanaka. And therefore you have to be manik to the Eved himself. The Hanaka goes directly to the Eved, but not to someone who the Eved owes money to. Therefore, Rabbi Lazar could not exclude Mocher Atzmo from Hanaka based on the word lo. He therefore holds that Manikin lo, and we learn that a Mocher Atzmo is Manikin lo from an Eved Shemachu Bezdin through the Gzer Shav Sachir Sachir. The Idach and the Tanakama, who darshans lo to exclude Mocher Atzmo, that there's no Hanaka, the Alma Nami lo Sfirle Rabbi Nasan. The Gemara answers that as a general rule, he never accepted Rabbi Nasan. Even in a regular chov, we don't hold like Rabbi Nasan. And therefore, we don't need a miyut to teach me that we exclude the application of Shibud Rab Nosson because, as far as Hanaka, because Shibud Rab Nosson never operates. And now Rav Yomi is going to explain the Machlokas Rav Tanakama Rav Elazar in the fourth din, if the Adon could be Moser Shivcha Knas to the Eved who sold himself. My time of the Tanakama. The Omar Mocher Atzmo Ein Rabba Mosel Shivcha Knanis. Even though Schar Sacher teaches us that we equate Mocher Atzmo with Mocher Alidei Bezdin. And the answer is a special meat. Meat Rachmana Legabi Machru Bezdin. There's a pasuk in the case of Machru Bezdin that has a mute in it in Shmos Chafalef. It says in Adonov Yitain Lo Lisha, Lo, who's Lo excluding? It could have said Yitain Isha. The Lo Lemocher Asatzmo. The Idach. And what about Rabbi Elazar? He holds that even Mocher Asatzmo, his Adon is allowed to give him a Shivcha Knanis, and he doesn't exclude the Eved from Lo. He's Lo Bal Korcho. According to Rabbi Elazar, the extra word Lo is going to exclude Bal Korcho, or include, I should say, Bal Korcho. So again, according to Rabbi Elazar, there's no pasuk to be Mamayit Mocher Asatzmo that he can't be given a Shivcha Knanis. So we're going to derive from Schar Sachir that the Rav, the Adon, is allowed, in fact, to give a Shivcha Knanis to the Eved against his will. I'm not exactly sure what Bal Korcho means in this context. Maybe you could clarify that, because no one could force him to be Baal. The L'chorah Kinyan has to be Midas. So if the Rav gave him a Shivcha Knanis, and it was against his will, I don't know what that means exactly. Ve'idach, and we go back now to the Tanakama who holds that Lo is coming as a mute to exclude Mochras Atzmo. So he's going to answer that Rabbo Mosel Shivcha Bal Korcho. Mimashe Nemar Ki Mishneh Schar Sochir Nafka. Let's derive it from Mishneh Schar Sochir. The Sanya we learned in the Brisa. Ki Mishneh Schar Sochir Avodecha. It means that an Eved will serve you twice his Pa'ula. What does that mean? Sochir Eino Oved El Bayom. Eved Ivri Oved Bein Bayom U Bein Balayla. So a regular worker that was hired to perform, he only works during the day. But in the case of an Eved Ivri, he has to work both Bayom U Balayla. I don't know when he rests. But you could ask for Chital Daitchosh Eved Ivri Oved Bein Bayom Balayla or Kfar Nemar Ki Tov Lo Imach. Adarabah. Imach means b'machol. Imach means b'mishteh. In other words, his standard of living goes all the way up to that of the Baal Bayis. So don't get nervous about the fact that the Eved works 24/7. Because that's not at all what this Bryce has in mind when it equates the level of an Eved Ivri straight across the board. So it's interesting when we read this Eved Ivri is Oved Ben B'Yom Be'Layla, we think that's a great chumrah and imposition on the Eved. But yet the Torah says, Ki tov lo imach, that he's having a great time by being your Eved. He gets the same food as you, he gets the same drink as you. So it's not possible to say that you could work the Eved day and night. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Mikan, Jumoselo Shifcha Knas Bal Korcho Kidei LaHolid Vlodos. So it's day is work and night is he's busy with the process of procreation because the Bala Eved is allowed to give him a Shifcha Knanis against his will. Be'idach, and what does Rabbi Elazar do with this drasha that Rabbo gives him a Shifcha Bal Korcho based on the word lo? And we had Mishnah Schar Sochir. So Gemara answers, Imi Hasam, if we would derive the halacha of the schus of ha'adam to give a shivcha to the Eved. Hava mina hani mili daite. That only applies if the Eved wants to get married to this woman. Aval bal karcho emalo. I might think that against the will of the Eved, emalo, aval bal karcho lo. And that's why I need the word lo, that Rabbo Mosel Shivcha Fil Bal Korcha. Elaman Tana Dlo Yolif. Now we go full swing back to figure out who doesn't have the Gzeir Shovim Sochir Sochir. Hi Tan. It's this Tan. Who? The Sanya learned in the parsha in Vayikra Chavei of Mochers Atzmo Lieved. Vishav el mishpachto. In other words, when Yovel comes around, he goes back to his family. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov pameh kosu medaber. What's the case? Ibe mocher atzmo. If he sold himself, is Hare Kvar Omer. So to tell me that Mocher Saspa goes out to Yovel, that we already have in the previous pasuk. It says Ad Shnasa Yovel Yavanimo. I bin Nirtza, who serves beyond his 6 years, but he also goes out to Yovel. Hare Kvar Omer. Eina Kos Medaber El Machru Bezdin Shtayim V'Shalosh Shonim Lifnei Yovel. And to teach us how Yovel Motzio. The Salke Daitech Yoliv, if you're going to tell me there will be Eliezer ben Yaakov, derives the Gzeira Shava of Socher Socher Lomali. Why do I need a pasuk, a special pasuk, to be marbe? Machru Bezdin, that he goes out for Yovel, Nelif, Socher, Socher. Should derive from the Gzeira Shava. Just like a regular Eved who sells himself is Yotzei B'Yovel, so too an Eved that's sold by Bezdin is Yotzei B'Yovel. So therefore, we're going to prove that Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov does not have the drasha of the Gzeira Shava. That's why he needs a special pasuk to teach us that if an Eved was sold by Bezdin, he goes out for Yovel. I can always say that Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Yolif Socher Socher, the Itzrich But nevertheless, we need a special pasuk to be mar b'machru bezdin. For Yitzias Yovel. And we cannot derive from the Gzeres Shava. Why? Maybe the Torah would be Kones Machru Bezdin because he violated Isa. The Torah says, Ki li b'nei Yisrael avadim v'lo avadei lavadim. And he went ahead and he sold himself. He violated Isa. Just 1 second. I mean, in the case of Machru Bezdin, he's guiltless. Just 1 second. I'm sorry, I keep getting mistaken. Yeah, Machru Bezdin, he violated an Isur, right? He sold because he was a Ganav, and he didn't have enough money to pay up. Maybe we should say that there's a knas imposed upon the Ganav. Maybe he shouldn't even go out B'yovel. Mashmallah, and that's why the pasuk wants to teach me that even in the case of Machru Bezdin, he goes out B'yovel, and it comes out that we still haven't proved who is the Tana who doesn't have the Joshua of Socher, the Gzeres Shava. Omar, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says in the Brisa, from the pasuk V'shav el mishpachto bin nirtza, if that pasuk is addressing the case of nirtza, harei kfar amur. We already have another pasuk elsewhere that nirtza goes out b'yovel. Mai, where is such a pasuk? The Sanya, we learned to the Brisa of V'shavtem ish el achuzaso, v'ish el mishpachto. This is in the Parsha of Yovel in Vayikra Chofhei. So Avodim through Yovel and Mishtachar, and they go back to their families. We have the Parsha of Yeshuvim Mishpachtom in the case of Mochers Atzmo. That's Vayikra Perek Chofhei. Ad Shnas HaYovel Yavod Imach Im Machru Bezdin Harei Kfar Omur. We already established that he's Yotze B'Yovel. Eina Kosim Medaber El B'Nirtza Shtayim V'Sholosh Shonim Lifnei HaYovel. Second, sorry. So again, comes Yovel, and the Eved is Mishtachri, goes back to his family. And the question is the following. We already have a pasuk for Mocheres Atzmo. It says, Ad Shnas HaYovel Yavod Imach. So let's assume, therefore, that the pasuk is referring to Mocher Al Mechru Bezdin. But that's also already said. It says, Harei Kfar Omur, that he goes out B'Yovel, as we saw in the Brisa before this, V'shavel Mishpachto. And imagine he was an Eved Nirtza a year before the Yovel, and now he goes free with Yovel. So the Gemara asks, my mashma, where do you see this in the pasuk that we're talking about an Eved Nirtza? There are two psukim regarding Yovel. And in both of them, we know which Eved we're talking about. So how do you have the audacity of adding an Eved Nirtza into the picture? Amar Rav Bar Shilo, Amar Kra Ish. In the parsha of Yovel, it says, V'shavtem ish al achuzaso, v'ish al mishpachto toshuvu, eze davar noeg b'ish, v'yeinu noeg b'ish, zeh av yomer zu ritzia. So we see that when we learned Ozno, it came to exclude an Amma. and she doesn't have Ritzia. But we see clearly that the pasuk is talking about an Eved Nirtza. And therefore we're going to derive the conclusion that even an Eved Nirtza, even though he has only 1 year till Yovel, he'll go out Yovel. So now the Gemara wants to explain, why do we need a pasuk for Machu Bezdin and also for an Eved Nirtza, that both of them go out Yovel? What was the Havmina that they wouldn't go out Yovel? Itzrich lemichtav. We need the pasuk v'shavel mishpachto as far as Machu Bezdin, and v'yitzrich lemichtav v'shavtem with regard to a Nirtza. Why? The Yashmin, if we only had the pasuk Machu Bezdin, we could have possibly argued that Mishum Delo Mata Yizimne. He never reached the time period for Yitzia Lecheres. It's before the 6 years are gone. Avol Nirtza D'Mitay Zimne, at least he already fulfilled his Avdus, a basic 6 years of Avdus, just that he chose to opted to stay with his Adon. And therefore, if he's already done all that work for 6 years, Ema Niknase. Maybe the Torah would impose a knas on an Eved Nirtza because he accepted upon himself extra avdus. He said lo etze, etc. And the Torah says avodehem, avodim hem li v'lo avodim la'avodim. So because of this Isur in the case of a Nirtza, we should say that he doesn't go out B'Yovel. And therefore I need a special pasuk. The Iyashme'in Nirtza, and if the pasuk would have taught me only the halach of Nirtza, that he goes out B'Yovel, I would have said Mishum Da'avid Le'Sheish. He should go out B'Yovel because the Eved Nirtza by definition has already fulfilled 6 years of Avdus. Ava Machru Bezdin, the Lo Avid Le'Sheish, he hasn't yet fulfilled that basic unit of 6 years of servitude. Now that the year of Yovel comes along, before he finishes the 6 years, perhaps we'd say he's not Yotze B'Yovel Tzricha. So therefore I need both, each one for its own reason. Now the Brisa Darshins on the pasuk V'shavtem Ishal Achuzos V'Ishal Mishpachto Yeshuvu in Parshas Yovel, that Nirtza is Yotze B'Yovel. So the Gemara asks, but there's another pasuk in Nirtza that says in Parshas Mishpat V'Ratza Adonav Es Ozno B'Martzeya V'Avadoli Olam. So why do we need these two psukim? Itzrich L'Michtav V'Shavtem, that a Nirtza goes out B'Yovel. Itzrich L'Michtav, you also need Avadoli Olam. The Ikasa Rachmana, if we only had what? If we only had Liolam, Vavado Liolam, Havamina, I would have thought Liolam Mamish. It means even after Yovel. Ikasa Rachmana, if I need a pasuk in Parshas Yovel V'Shavtem to teach me that a Nirtza goes out B'Yovel, because Rachmana V'Shavtem, if the Torah had just written V'Shavtem, Havamina, I would have thought Hani Mili Heicha Delo Avad Sheish. Aval Heicha Di Avad Sheish, Lo Yei Sofo Chomer Mitchilasa. Ma Tchilasa Sheish, Av Sofo Nami Sheish. We would have thought that since the original basic Avdus was a minimum of 6 years, and now he accepted another round of Avdus, he's got to give another 6 years, nothing less will cut the mustard. Kamashvon li olam. When it says Avada li olam, it means that there's no Avdus for the Nirtza that's limited to 6 years, but rather there's a tkufa of li olam. And what does li olam mean? Olamo shel yovel. So it's interesting that it's almost counterintuitive. He's saying that because it says the word liolom by Yovel, it means that the avdus of the nirtza is not limited to 6 years, but rather it's limited to a period which is called liolom, which has Yovel in the middle, and that breaks up the avdus. Elaman Tana to lo yolif schar soch. So we still haven't found the Tana who rejects the Gzeir Shava of schar soch here. And the Gemara answers Rebbe, he desanya